Well, welcome everybody. My name is Jim Ralph. I'm in the History Department and also Dean for Faculty Development and Research. Ethan happens to be one of my advisees for history classes. But today I'm introducing him for this talk, and you'll hear a little bit more of why I'm doing this. Ethan Brady is a senior at Middlebury College. He's a joint major in architecture and history with a minor in mathematics. This lecture, which comprises part of an independent study in the Art Department, bridges Ethan's passions for architecture and urbanism with a more newfound interest in graphic design and fashion. The lecture was self-organized by Ethan and supervised by Peter Brookham, my colleague in the Department of History of Art and Architecture, who regrets that he cannot make it today due to an unforeseen circumstance. Ethan hopes the talk today will enlighten many in the audience. It's good to see so many of you here to the world of fashion they might not have been aware about, but which holds an undeniable stake in our society today. And so, with that, I introduce Ethan Brady. Ethan.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks everyone for coming and taking the time today to learn about Supreme. For those who don't know, Supreme is a store founded in 1994 as a skate shop in New York City's Soho district. Since then, it's grown to select locations in major metropolises, among them Paris, London, Tokyo, and Los Angeles. The store has cultivated a reputation over the years for making clothing, skateboards that sell out in seconds, and they attract long lines at the physical stores. In this lecture, I'm going to analyze how Supreme functions as an urban institution to its customers and how it uses design to promote its culture. I'll use photographs of the stores, images from catalogs and lookbooks, and videos produced on Supreme's own website to explore the store's use of design. So I'm going to break it up into three parts: architectural design, clothing design, and graphic design. And then at the end, I'm going to turn to the significance of Supreme in today's consumer culture. So without any further ado, let's get to the Supreme. In its early years, Supreme advertised its business through printed material. The image at the left depicts a sumo wrestler getting a haircut, below which is contact information for the shop. The arrangement of scenes resembles a film strip, with each negative showing a close-up of the hair from different angles. Together with the Supreme logo, these barber images evoke a skate shop that offers everyday style. On the right is a photograph of a downtown New York street scene resembling the street imagery of mid-century New York, the kind that you might see in movies like A Bronx Tale. The market street corner and the crowd of people suggest commerce, in particular an urban commerce that is spontaneous, and particularly urban. These stickers and postcards represent, in my view, the founding documents of Supreme. This architectural imagery captured the original New York store's status as a locus of a Soho community. Skaters saw the store on Lafayette Street as a home. Aaron Bondaroff, who was a former skater for Supreme and a worker in the store, he said that Supreme didn't just cater to the New York street skater, it was and continues to be the last social club standing in Little Italy. For urban dwellers, the storefront in Soho functioned as both a commercial checkpoint and a social hub. It was a place where skaters could meet and congregate before skating to other streets in the neighborhood. Now, since those early days in 1984, Supreme has opened several new stores, all of which tend to be in fashionable districts. Supreme Paris, as you see here in the Marais district, is a monochrome black storefront decorated with a small red Supreme sign jutting out from the facade. Large glass windows offer a look into the store's collection, and these windows are often illuminated like the glow of an art gallery. The storefront contrasts with the white limestone of the surrounding buildings, making this store a minimalist intervention into the historic architecture of the street, Rue Barbetta. Prominent skaters in the Paris skate scene run this store, making the store of its place just as much as the original New York location. Supreme London is located on Peter Street in London's Soho district. Again, the ubiquitous box logo marks the facade like a barbershop marker. It's the only flair to a rather staid storefront, all black, signifying to the knowledgeable observer exactly the type of commerce that goes on inside. To the unassuming pedestrian, though, all they might see is this weekly spectacle, a line of people in hoodies extending around the block, of one or two bouncers at the door shooing people in 2 at a time. For Supreme, the skate shop is a design space selling designed objects. It's also an urban phenomenon, like a corner market open once a week, that benefits from a density of shoppers and also pedestrians who aren't shopping. Supreme Brooklyn is the newest Supreme store, but like others, it is integrated into the existing street store. It's also the only building to be made of brick and to have graffiti on its facade. The interior has a rather industrial feel, with ceiling pipes exposed and an open floor like a warehouse. At the same time, though, apparel lines the walls so that shoppers walk around the periphery of the store rather than the middle. In the middle of the store is a wooden skate bowl designed by Rachel Allen Architecture, an architecture firm, encouraging skaters to hang out in the store as they would in a skate park. The interior shopping experience thus becomes an extension of the urban world outside of Supreme's doors. It also intrinsically ties the goods being sold with the activity of skating. Supreme Los Angeles, located in the Fairfax district, maintains a vernacular architectural style while inserting the brand's minimalism onto the storefront. A slightly larger red sign than usual marks the entrance. And with a facade of light blue stucco, the LA store still has a good amount of glass frontage. The roofline is staggered, and at the top is a neon box logo sign fitting of the Los Angeles Strip, which you can also see here. Tall palm trees and traffic lights might make this a distinctly Angelino location. With this store, Supreme demonstrates through architecture that it is committed to urban spaces, is careful to embrace vernacular styles and precedent, but still sells products that are evocative of the store's roots. The products in every Supreme store, as I said before, line the walls like an art gallery. Aaron Bondaroff, who was a skater for the store in New York, recalled that the t-shirts were folded so tightly that it was like art, and if a customer touched the display, the staff would bark at them. Each week, any of the Supreme stores, when they close for installation, they do so just like an art gallery, and then they reopen with new merchandise just like an art gallery. But as Supreme skater Glenn O'Brien has noted, people would often camp out overnight to get the items that they want and be the first one in the store. He recalled, "I couldn't ever remember anyone ever camping out for the release of a lithograph." So there's a distinction here that's, in ways, it's not an art gallery. The selection of stock is pared down to that week's release. Many items come in a limited palette. Skateboards are hung on the wall like pieces of art. Vogue wrote in 1995 about the store, "Everything is sturdy, comfortable, and functional. Function in this case being skating." I'll move now into a discussion about the actual clothes themselves. In 2010, Supreme's founder, James Jabaya, sat for an interview with the art publisher Rizzoli in preparation for a monograph to be released that year. And he said what distinguished Supreme from other skate brands is that it didn't offer the typical skatewear for its clothing, and rather, instead of cheap material, Supreme invested in heavyweight cotton for its hoodies and used a variety of graphics that did not exclusively stick to a skateboarding theme. Designs for clothing often use detailed imagery printed on the whole fabric so that the imagery becomes the object of dress. This rayon shirt, released in spring-summer 2018, features artwork by Richard Estes, depicting a drugstore from another era. The wearer projects an imagined architectural place, this is not a photograph, complete with neon signage and Pall Mall posters at the bottom, as if inhabiting this space. Supreme has collaborated with Playboy throughout the years, including on this hand-knit collared sweater from fall-winter 2017. The meticulous construction meant it could not be mass-produced. This annual collaboration caters to Supreme's customers, many of whom are young males, because it projects a masculine bravado and a kind of irreverence. Yet still, this piece of clothing is a hand-knit sweater. It's high quality, and without this graphic, probably would be considered dressing up. So therein lies the irony of this piece and many other Supreme pieces. Two recent pieces highlight Supreme's political themes in its clothing. As an independent skateboarding brand, Supreme's expressed an institutional criticism, including a resistance to racism, authoritarian regimes, and very often Republican political figures. Presidents Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump have all been targets of sticker campaigns or mocking graphic tees. 2 weeks after Trump's election in 2016, Supreme released this tee that captured an anti-establishment bent. The tee had text screen printed on it that denounced racism and sexist pigs. It continued to say no to television, patriotism, political ideologies, any of the 1,001 ways in which this society keeps you from realizing your own needs and desires. among other things. Supreme donated all the proceeds of this tee to the ACLU. Supreme glorified the 44th president in a series of tacky shirts and jackets featuring Obama's headshot. This series catered to the primarily young consumer base for whom Obama was their first election. The series was also released just after Trump was inaugurated, making it a consciously political piece of clothing. The 2018 season saw a project with the estate of Martin Luther King Jr., in this case a series of heavyweight hooded sweatshirts, screen printed with photographs of MLK. The nature of a hooded garment is one of secrecy and stealth and is often associated with lower class, criminals, and often is used to racially profile people of color. In this case, though, the meaning of the hoodie is subverted as an object of pride. For one, it was available in only neon colors, and for another, the text, as you see here, expresses an audacious and very optimistic message. With this hoodie, Supreme and Martin Luther King's estate have together made the politics of black pride into a wearable item. It's a yearly tradition at Supreme to collaborate with the North Face, an outdoor gear company known for its fleeces and puffy jackets. In their 2014 collaboration, the brands embraced the idea of expedition by printing a graphic of the world map on a jacket. Complete with country and ocean labels, the map is like a functional cartographic document. On the left breast are flags of 6 countries: China, the United States, Soviet Union, Great Britain, Japan, and France. Perhaps this is the UN Security Council plus Japan, but why Supreme would choose the Cold War as a reference point is unclear. Nonetheless, the jacket makes a bold and vaguely imperialist statement that the entirety of the globe can be worn on one's body like art. More recently, the two brands released a hunter collection of puffy jackets, one in Realtree camouflage print on the left, and another in hunter orange on the right. The lookbook advertising this drop featured a photo shoot of models walking through the streets of New York City. In this image, the model, with his hoodie up and decked out in camouflage, looks both ways before crossing the street. SUVs line the sidewalk on the other side. The jacket serves no practical purpose other than its design value, yet still it sold out nearly instantaneously when it dropped. Here, Supreme is demonstrating an ironic approach to the urban landscape. The appeal of this piece relates to, and perhaps a fascination with, a part of American culture that most city dwellers never experience, which is hunting. And it also might suggest the notion of the urban jungle. Still, the brands produced a piece in 2008 that epitomized New York City. In 2 parka jackets, the brand printed an image of the city skyline, one during the day and one during the night. We can pretty much tell that this is an imagined cityscape because this view isn't possible. It's the Empire State Building here and then the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So again, this is imagined, but still it's evoking 2 classic architectural monuments of the city. The illustrative quality of the day jacket resembles a postcard, while the night jacket evokes a more mysterious place, something like Gotham, which is also one of the nicknames of New York City. Both of these jackets celebrate the urban, and especially the New York, with wearable architectural imagery. In diametric opposition stands this spring-summer 2017 piece, Cowboy Denim Work Jacket. This features full-color artwork by artist Jim Krantz, covering all sides of the fabric. This jacket evokes American Western imagery. The cowboy on a horse kicks up dirt as he moves through a field, swinging his lasso behind him. While the horse is bridled and the cowboy saddled in, the image is tightly focused. The appeal of this piece lies in the symbol of the rogue cowboy, who in literature and film has often typically defied rules and even governments. Another piece released that year was a quilted work jacket featuring a large embroidered patch of Mexican revolutionary Emiliano Zapata. He was a major figure in the revolution. He was also an employer of guerrilla warfare and led a peasant revolution. This portrait highlights Zapata's rifle and his ammunition slung over his chest. This is also a rather famous portrait. But by embroidering this image on this piece of clothing, Supreme is making a conscious, if unexpected, appeal to the anti-authority ethos of its customers. Supreme traveled into the world of high fashion in its 2017 collaboration with Louis Vuitton. The House of LV, which originated as a luxury luggage maker in 1888, is essential to the development of high fashion, as well as more recently the concept of seasonal collections, which Supreme uses. The Fall/Winter 2017 collection carried the weight of the luxury of the Louis Vuitton brand, but rather than using the 1896 monogram, the designers at both brands actually combined the two, interspersing Supreme's wordmark with the more iconic Louis Vuitton monogram. So on baseball jerseys and overalls, as you see here, the brand that stands for the epitome of luxury, Louis Vuitton, became infused with a rowdy street vibe. The collection is markedly masculine, as we see from the choice of items, as well as the posturing of the photo shoots. Some have noted that Kim Jones, the creative director of Louis Vuitton at the time, seemed to be saying that no conversation on men in New York City is complete without Supreme. Certainly no discussion of Supreme and Louis Vuitton is complete without acknowledging the first collaboration with the brand. In the year 2000, Supreme didn't get permission, but instead they printed the monogram on a series of skateboards. This ended in a lawsuit from Louis Vuitton that forced Supreme the end of sale of these boards. This moment in history suggests that authenticity is a key part to fashion, and particularly to Supreme's fashion, but one that Supreme has flaunted in the past. Supreme as a company is based off of authenticity. It's the reason why fake Supreme going out on the secondhand market is worth almost nothing, while the real thing goes upwards of thousands of dollars. Connoisseurs of the brand can easily tell a fake with a quick glance at the material, the embroidering, or even the shape of the letter E in the box logo. But as this 2000 LV debacle suggests, counterfeiting might play a role in the story. Perhaps a logo is more successful the more copies it generates. In the same way that Gaston Louis Vuitton turned to Art Deco in the 1920s, Supreme has worked with leading artists to produce limited edition products. These have included Jeff Koons and Damien Hirst, as well as artists like M.C. Escher and Nan Goldin. The practice results in physical artifacts that can hang on an art gallery's walls, or in the case of skateboards, have wheels attached and skated until the edges wear off. These skateboards possess a supreme irony. They're the lowest of the low, sometimes seen as toys for punks and losers, but they're designed by world-famous artists and seen as collectibles. Supreme has gone so far as to print paintings by old masters on clothing and objects. This pair of sweatpants from Fall/Winter 2017 depicts Michelangelo's scenes from the Sistine Chapel, including the iconic creation of Adam at the bottom. It's almost offensive to put Michelangelo's masterpiece on a piece of clothing considered athletic and sometimes sloppy, but with these sweatpants, someone can now wear high art to the gym. In 2002, the brand released a collection of 5 skateboards depicting Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. These boards are the product of really an audacity to take holy imagery and plaster it on commercial objects. It takes a certain irreverence to do so with skateboards, because in the case of a skateboard, a skater's shoe could very well be stepping on Jesus' face. This season offers a 10-inch tall ceramic vase printed with graphics resembling letters of the alphabet. A closer examination shows that 4 of the letters are purposely out of place so that they can all be in a row. This ceramic vase is at the very least impolite, but it still maintains an aesthetic value. It resembles the Greco-Roman pottery unearthed in archaeological digs, which also depicted imagery and patterns that are read by scholars as clues to classical society. Perhaps in 1,000 years, this vase will be one of the prized artifacts of 2018 society. If that vase wasn't the most absurd thing you've heard recently, take a look at this object from last season. It's a ceramic plate depicting a dinner of chicken, green beans, and mashed potatoes. Despite the appearance, this is not a dinner plate, this is a ceramic ashtray for cigarettes. The imagery is likely a reference to Southern cuisine, and in particular, a stereotype of African American cuisine. This could make sense given Supreme's cultural affinity with the hip-hop community. The ashtray also has an element of the postmodern. It appears as one thing, but functions as something totally different. Each season, Supreme releases a set of what it calls accessories, often mundane objects made by companies that specialize in them. They've made baseball gloves with Rawlings, boxing gloves with Everlast, and playing cards with Bicycle. Save for the dog bowl in the bottom left, these companies are essentially the name brands that are best known for these objects. So through these collaborations, Supreme is attaching its name and cultural identity to the very best of the best. These branded objects almost always cost more than the unbranded equivalent, sometimes by a lot. So in the store of Supreme, the value of these everyday objects comes almost exclusively from the Supreme wordmark. Many of these objects follow a theme of physical labor and workmanship. Supreme's released hardware tools like work gloves, shovels, and hammers. Some of these tools have a darker connotation, including the hand axe and crowbar that you see here, which are associated with street crime and violence. These tools, or weapons as it may, are uniformly red and distinctly of the brand. In commodifying them under its label, Supreme is both profiting off of mundane objects and making an active, if subversive, commentary through its choice of object. One of the most mocked items has to have been the Supreme brick, released in 2016. Each of these bricks sold for $30, but some have gone upwards of $1,000 on eBay. Though innocent, the bricks might connote criminality, since they could be thrown into shop windows during a crime. But also as the basic component of a building, they also could connote architecture, although it's not even financially practical to get enough bricks to build something out of them. So the Supreme brick is arguably the epitome of uselessness. Someone could use it as a paperweight or a doorstop maybe, but for fans of the brand, the value of the brick is simply in having it, the real authentic thing. As a designed object, albeit a basic design, and as an object commodified for its name, it represents what Supreme stands for. At the opposite end is the cash paperweight that Supreme released in 2017. It includes authentic US banknotes encased in lucite. It's 98 singles sandwiched between two $100 bills. Of course, the money is completely useless because it's encased in glass, but the object also ran into legal trouble with postal regulations because it couldn't be mailed in the mail, so it could only be bought in store. Here, Supreme seems to be consciously glorifying the authenticity of the banknotes and also consciously rejecting the notion of counterfeit. Artists like Andy Warhol have incorporated representations of money into their art, but in this case we have the real thing preserved in glass. The band in the middle recalls money in a suitcase, connoting possibly some sort of criminality or legal sale. For buyers who could afford this object, they perhaps bought into any of these meanings, or they just wanted to prove that they had a cash paperweight marked Supreme. Not every designed object is exclusively for the rich. This collaboration between Supreme and the New York City subway system, the MTA, led to a functional MetroCard with 2 fares already loaded onto it, and they could also be loaded on at subway stations just like any other MetroCard. Supreme released an advertising video on its Instagram before the release of this object, which emphasized the ubiquity and functionality of it. Note that the subject in this video wears a Supreme backpack as he travels through the bowels of the city. The video associates the Supreme MetroCard with access to the entire subway system. First comes the descent to the station, the realm of the MTA. Any subway rider should be familiar with the cacophony of pedestrian bodies, underground pipes, and train noises. So here, Supreme becomes part of the urban fabric of New York City. The MetroCard, ironically, represents a collaboration with a major government institution, something that the skate brand would usually be opposed to. But these cards were mass-produced and they were distributed in subway stations, and so they remain as physical documents of the city's history. To close out this lecture, I'm going to turn to a discussion of Supreme's graphic design. When not putting its red box logo on clothing, Supreme often appropriates iconic graphics from other brands with edited text, such as this Morton Salt tee from the mid-2000s. The girl carrying an umbrella is immediately recognizable for her posture, but where one would expect the word Morton in all caps, instead they see Supreme. Rather than the brand's name being set in lowercase Futura and in red, here Supreme has adopted the same font and capitalization as the original Morton ad. By emulating the graphic and typographic design of this staple product, Supreme is capitalizing off the history of other brands, and in the process, casting itself as culturally significant in its own right. Supreme has done similar graphic appropriation with iconic American brands like Boar's Head and Budweiser, as well as this, you see here, White Castle, and this pair of Vans shoes. The black stripe on the side marks these as high top model, and the high ankle specifically as skate shoes. White Castle is primarily a Midwestern hamburger chain, meaning that there's no locations in New York or other cities. The locations are also notorious for shamelessly using a caricature of medieval castle architecture, but their brand carries this notoriety with that. So it's ironic for Supreme to produce this skate shoe, which is an explicitly urban item, and this company a rather rural company. So like the North Face camouflage jacket, which we saw earlier, this might represent an aesthetic fascination with rural Americana. Every season, Supreme prints a photo t-shirt showing a famous person who is in turn wearing the white box logo tee, which was one of Supreme's first t-shirts that they sold. The image shown here is the Muppet Kermit the Frog, and it's also one of Supreme's most notable photograph tees. Others have included musicians Lou Reed and Neil Young, as well as boxer Mike Tyson. The photographs double as posters that, in this case, become like public advertising. Posters popped up on buildings and dumpsters in many cities, an analog equivalent of internet memes that spread over social media just for their sheer absurdity. What makes these so absurd is that it's Kermit, a stuffed animal, wearing a Supreme tee. As seen with these dumpsters, the posters become elements of the city's most mundane corners. The red box logo has become a rather ubiquitous sight in New York City, as demonstrated by this large mural in the Lower East Side. Its placement on a blank wall beside ghost markings of a ladder suggests that the logo does not have any fundamental permanence, that it's part of the ever-changing physical landscape of the city. The mural was painted in a day. Supreme did not invent this box logo on its own. Commentators have long noticed that it resembles the work of Barbara Kruger, an American conceptual artist from New Jersey. Kruger frequently pulls black and white photographs from magazines and overlays them with bold declarative text set in future or bold oblique, which is the same font that Supreme uses. As seen here, Kruger puts her work in public spaces, train stations, bus stops, and billboards. These are spaces that are part of the urban fabric. They're ostensibly neutral spaces, but Kruger poses questions of consumption, power, and inequality to pedestrians that flow through them. The text has become her signature style, and so Supreme appropriated it into its architectural, sartorial, and graphic designs in order to create its own aesthetic for its commerce. In a 1990 essay for the New York Times, Kruger said that art can be a potential commodity, a vessel for financial speculation and exchange. Kruger's 1987 work, I Shop, Therefore I Am, addresses this theme. It depicts a hand holding the text of the title. This mantra is, in essence, an object held by someone. It's self-commodified like a merchandise tag. And so what did Supreme do? They took this picture of the shopper's hand, removed the text in the middle, put its own box logo in between, printed it on a tee, and then sold it. After Supreme sued another company for producing t-shirts that also used Futura Italic inside red labels, Barbara Kruger had some choice words for the brand. For an article that Complex magazine was writing on the lawsuit, Kruger sent a reporter her comment, and I quote this verbatim: "What a ridiculous clusterfuck of totally uncool jokers. I make my work about this kind of sadly foolish farce. I'm waiting for all of them to sue me for copyright infringement." The box logo took on its largest scale last summer when Supreme carved into a wheat field in California its logo at a massive scale. He released a video entitled Crop Circles, making an express relationship to extraterrestrial life. crop logo is perhaps the most audacious task Supreme has set out to do. It was unapologetically an advertisement for its upcoming collection, but the video took on its own artistic quality. The stunt is perhaps befitting of the name Supreme, a confident and some would say arrogant name. Glenn O'Brien described the brand as a modernist or postmodernist equivalent of Paramount or Acme. But Supreme has not yet reached its peak. It's continued to release collections since then, still embracing facets of design in its enterprise. At other fashion houses, the creative director is often a major figure in the world of fashion. Louis Vuitton, for example, had Marc Jacobs, and now it has Virgil Abloh of the brand Off-White. But Supreme's designers are not prominent figures. The brand is like a mysterious monolith, producing clothing and goods for skaters, young people, and even working professionals. It also provides endless fodder for internet memes. Supreme exists to make a profit, but also to make things happen. It's a vehicle for artists and designers. Supreme spreads style, but it also spreads thought and information. For Supreme, culture is its business, and as I hope I've shown you today, design is its culture. Thank you. I'm open to take questions if you guys want. Matt.
Thank you so much. I wanted to maybe articulate exactly more what, like, talking about why Supreme is like a specifically masculine brand, or in what ways the objects are masculinity is coded with those objects, and like it seems like in many ways Supreme, like for example, like with the White Castle bands, or in this like appropriation, in many ways stealing of artists' original work. Is that kind of what you mean by like what exactly do you mean by like the masculinity associated with it? Does that have anything to do with the way that the brand kind of dominates other companies' logos?
Yeah, I think one example would be a lot of the objects that they have, especially the weapons, connote violence. We saw also the Mexican revolutionary with a gun and ammo strung across his chest. Supreme's also done, like, they did a series on Scarface where they prominently featured guns and text associated with guns in that collection. I think that's the brand has, in some of the things that it sells, a very violent message. I also think in terms of like more subtle masculinity, I think just this photograph, the way it's composed, the fact that all of their models are male skaters, very young, and like in the advertising videos, they're all like have this swagger to them. I think the brand presents itself in that masculine way.
And so do you think that the messages Supreme distributes are exclusively catered towards like maybe male perspective, or because it seems in many ways that like the production of the objects are inherently, like some of them like can be impressive, right? In many ways it feels like sometimes Supreme maybe like colonizes or appropriates like cultural objects that it then aestheticizes in this objectivist way of making it like super universal and accessible. In reality, there's a lot of violence that contributed to the creation of that cultural artifact first. So do you agree with that, or do you feel like its message is because it is a really complicated and fascinating brand, but I guess that would be kind of my perspective on that presentation.
Yeah, I do think it unashamedly appropriates both artists and also cultures. Like they appropriate Asian culture in a lot of their objects. And then they only sell like men's clothing. So women who want to buy the brand, they are buying like stereotypically male clothing. I think they do that unashamedly, but I think it can still be critiqued.
And yeah, building on what Matt said, I think it's interesting that Supreme seemed to take on this role of bashing authority and taking on a role of promoting equality, and yet they only sell male clothing, which plays into patriarchal ideas and seems to kind of go against their main message.
Yeah, there's a lot of contradiction with that. I mean, they've done, like when natural disasters happen, for example, the Tokyo earthquake, they released a box logo with the Japanese sun. It wasn't just the flag, but it actually had like the imperial sun with the sun rays. So on the one hand, all the proceeds of that were donated to the earthquake cause and like helping people out. So there was this humanitarian aspect of it. But at the same time, you're right, there's inherent contradictions in that I think need to be pointed out. So it's like a pretty complicated space, but it's ultimately, I think, powered by its desire to sell objects. It's like, it's this commercial brand.
I'm wondering, since they're such a hot brand, there's been any significant interest in financialization?
Yeah, so actually recently, I think last year, 2 years ago, Supreme became no longer an independent small skate shop. They were purchased by the Carlyle Group, which is a private equity firm, and they purchased a 50% stake in the brand. So it's hard to tell, but that purchase may have shifted a bit of the business strategy. Like people are saying that Supreme is starting to make more products, so things sell out less quickly. So that's something still to be determined, the actual effect on the brand and whether if there's going to be a market shift from the exclusive nature of the products and if it's going to become even more profit driven.
You said that they like close store every day and they bring new items in. Is that like at every store they bring the same new items in all the locations, or is it different products?
So it's every store is the same each week. So at the beginning of a season, they'll release kind of the items that they're going to have for that season, and then they don't really say when, but they don't really say what they're going to release each week, but some number of those, as well as collaborations that pop up during that season, they come in to each of the stores. It's all the same in every store as well as online. So one particular shirt with a certain graphic on it, that will probably only be sold once. Actually, it will be only sold once that time, that Thursday when it gets put in the stores and put online. But then there are some staple products like Hanes underwear and Hanes tees and some like skateboard wheels they'll usually stock a lot of. But for the most part, it's every week a set of items is released across the brand, and then they're all sold out, and they're not made again.
Can you say something about someone who, I'm learning most of what I know about Supreme from you today, but could you say a little bit more about the founders in terms of, are there individuals that you could point to that are still directing its ambitious programs, its design?
Yeah, so the founder is James Jabaya. In 1994, he had worked previously for Stussy, which is another skateboarding brand, and he wanted to open his own store, so he did so in Soho because it had the cheapest rent. He actually was not a skateboarder himself. He was only like involved in the fashion side because he had worked for a skateboarding company. So he liked the aesthetic of the skateboard culture. So he also had a lot of friends in that community. He's still I don't know if it's CEO or like head of the brand. He's still there. He was at, when Supreme opened its newest store in Brooklyn, he was at that opening. So he's, I would say, still the creative director at the top, but he also has a team of people helping him, and then also at each store the set of skater workers who manage that own store.
Does Supreme call themselves a skateboarding company still, or is it more of a luxury brand now?
I would say they'd still call themselves a skate shop. It's or a skate brand. I think they would consider themselves a brand now. I think they explicitly don't want the label of luxury, because although a lot of these products are like a hoodies at Supreme are like $150, but they're very heavyweight. But like, it's not as if it's Louis Vuitton or some of these very high-end luxury designers where like a t-shirt is like $5,000. So I don't think they want the luxury label, but they still want like a high quality of fabric and design in their product.
Have you come across any of skaters' perspectives on maybe they think that Supreme has become overrated, or what their perspectives would be?
I mean, I've watched some YouTube videos of like when they interview the skaters at the drops. They're like considered. Some people are considered hype beasts, like they only wear the stuff with the logos all over. Some people are attracted to the less branded items and maybe don't like some of the more obnoxious objects, like the brick was mocked a lot. So I think it depends on, there is both in the consumer base. Okay.
Well,
Thank you
thank
for
you
coming.
very much.